Welcome to the Transform Your Wealth and Health podcast, where experts in wealth, health, and fitness help transform your life. Here's your host, Andy Arter.
He's an author, columnist, mastermind champion, lecturer, and barrister. He's also my favourite chaser on TV's The Chase. It's Shaun Wallace. Shaun, how are we doing?
How you doing, Andy? Pleasure to meet you, bro. Thank you.
Shaun,
thanks for coming to my chambers. Yeah.
Absolute pleasure. Now, you invited me along a while back.
Yeah. I think we ran into each other at Halifax and Holborn. So just as I was coming here, I just went in to pay a couple of bills and head straight here.
Chance meeting.
Yeah.
We were talking about this a little bit earlier. The things that happen randomly by chance, but just by being in the right place at the right time.
Sometimes that's the best place to be. Actually, the right place at the right time.
Exactly. Yeah. So from our meeting, I went out and I purchased your book.
Yeah.
So, fantastic book, by the way, Chasing the Dream.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask you, we were talking earlier a little bit about it, I was going to ask you about clips and bits and pieces from the book, and you said, ask me why I wrote the book. So, Shaun, why did you write the book?
Well, the reason why I wrote the book was in the aftermath of me losing the Against Grand Final on the 29th of June 2008, and I was sitting in my car gutted because it was my first defeat on a TV quiz show in 5 years.
Wow.
So I was listening to Steely Dan's Greatest Hits because that was the music I was playing on my way to the show, because I was the only contestant out of the 32 contestants who took part in the competition to play the quarter-final, semi-final, final all in one day.
Wow.
And the reason why I had to do that is because they didn't expect me to keep on winning, but I did keep on winning. On the last day, there was only one recording day left.
Yeah. And
I was in the middle of a trial. And I could hardly say to a judge, oh, by the way, can I simply pull out and do a TV quiz show? You told me where to get off.
Yeah.
But luckily the case went short, so it enabled me to actually take part in the competition, and I was in the studio for 13 hours. Yeah. And I fell short, and I was so disappointed. I was sitting in my car thinking about my life for a whole hour, listening to the Steely Dan Greatest Hits track at the same time. And I thought, you know what? It would make a good story. So I went home and started to write it. It was originally called True to the Game. And I wrote it in the space of about 4 months. Yeah. And it was mainly about my quizzing exploits as opposed to my personal life. And the reason why I didn't publish it in 2008 is I did so to coincide with the screening of the competition. Yeah. But guess what they brought out? Slumdog Millionaire. Right. So I wasn't going to actually compete with my life story with an Oscar-winning film.
No.
So what I decided to do was to go away and reconstruct the whole project. And I thought to myself, people are not going to simply want to know about your quizzing exploits. They're going to want to know where you've come from.
Yeah.
So I've told it. Although it's a fairly big book, it tells my whole life story.
It certainly does. Now, it's warts and all, Shaun.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Did you get permission from the people in the family to put some of the stuff that's in there? Because you go reasonably personal, don't you?
I do, personal. And I didn't seek their permission because, as I've always said, that in relation to an autobiography, I've tried to be honest, I've tried to be open, and I've not basically defamed anybody. I've just basically told the truth. Yeah. And I did show it to them, and they were more than happy with what I had to say. But I said to myself, and I said to them, if you're not happy, write your own autobiography and tell your own version.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I mean, literally, you were telling stuff, So if I can touch on it, one of the early parts of the book, after you tell the story where you're listening to Steely Dan and you've been defeated, and first time in 5 years. You then go on to talk about the family coming over from Jamaica.
That's correct. Yeah, how we, my mum and dad, I was born in England, but my mum and dad, obviously, they didn't meet in Jamaica, but they met over here, but they were from Jamaica. And, then my eldest sister, Sandra, who was my first big hero, because she taught me how to read, she taught me how to have an educated mind. And although my dad wasn't a literate person, the one great gift he told me was to sort of, be conscious of the world around you. Yeah. So he taught me and encouraged me to read the newspapers, watch the news items on TV. Yeah. So that made me a 60s child who was aware of the world and the environment around him. And I suppose that's where I get my sort of my passion for having that inquisitive mind, wanting to expand my mind, wanting to learn things. And I am very, very personal. I talk about watching my parents' marriage disintegrate. I talk about that. I talk about the fact that my mother and my eldest sister eventually clashed and led her to actually leaving home, and she had a child at the age of 17. so I do give a warts and all account. The one thing I don't talk about in the book is my own personal relationships with women. And the reason for that is not because I've got anything to hide, it's because of the fact that, again, I don't think it's right to actually talk about an intimate relationship. It should always remain behind closed doors from a one-sided viewpoint. And I wouldn't want to actually talk about intimate relationships in that regard to embarrass the previous relationships I've had. And it's not I've got anything to hide. I haven't. And most of my ex-girlfriends have read it and said, why wasn't I in it? And I said, listen, I didn't want to basically write a story which basically was intimate to us. Everybody knew about the relationship we had. But what goes on behind closed doors should stay behind closed doors. So, I'm sorry, but it's like being in the World Cup 30. You weren't in the 23. So
you can't actually say that to them. You just
I did say that to them. I certainly did say that to them.
Did you really?
Absolutely. What do you mean by that? Well, you got 30 players who were originally picked in the provisional squad, but only 23 can go to the World Cup finals, and you sadly didn't make the 23.
You like your football. We'll touch on that in a little while if it's okay. Cool. I want to go into the fact that originally, when you was at school, you wasn't incredibly academic, was you?
I was bright, but I didn't know how to pass exams, and I knew what I wanted to be at the age of 11. I wanted to be a lawyer. And then the first letter I wrote was to the Bar Council when I was about 12 years old, something like that, and they wrote back to me, and I kept that letter as a source of inspiration. But having a sort of, a computer-like mind is different to knowing how to pass exams. And I didn't actually have the maturity or indeed the confidence in order to actually know how to do that. And there were these struggles, especially in relation to trying to pass O-level English, which eventually took me 5 times.
Wow. That's a point to pick up on, Shaun. I mean, anyone that's out there that's struggling, I mean, they look at you, you're the fountain of knowledge, and there you have failed a standard exam. That's
I've written an autobiography. So it just goes to show, and the reason why I wanted to give such a warts and all account like that in relation to the setbacks I've had in my life, because I want people to realise if you do have setbacks in life, your future's not behind you. I don't know anybody who's gone through life, unless you're born with a silver spoon in your mouth and you've had things basically given to you on a plate, who haven't had adversity. And I think part of life is having that adversity, because it helps you grow as an individual, it helps you cope with disappointment and sometimes defeat, and it helps you to actually realise that when you do overcome those disappointments, to appreciate the goals which you attain and try to set for yourself.
Sure. So eventually you start passing exams and then you get to become a barrister.
Again, that even what's happened to me since I qualified as a barrister, passing the bar exams and qualifying as a barrister is the best thing which ever happened to me.
Really,
The reason being, as an 11-year-old boy, I taught the talk. I was like Muhammad Ali. I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to be the greatest lawyer. Right, and if you talk the talk, you've got to walk the walk. And it was a proud moment when my mum and dad were there to watch their eldest son pass the bar exams, who didn't turn out to be a thief, who didn't turn out to be a disappointment. And one thing I always say, it could have been easy for me to actually fall off the rocky road. But the one thing which kept me on the straight and narrow, I didn't want to make my mum cry.
Okay, well that's an emotional thing to touch
on.
True. You and your mum close, would you say?
We are, as I say, sadly she's suffering from Alzheimer's disease, but I had brought a house across the road from her to keep an eye on her, God bless her, I owe her a great deal, because when my parents' marriage had broken up, although I saw my dad and he was very, very supportive, Mum basically bore the brunt of raising 3 children, and it wasn't easy for her, and by the mid-40s she was a basically broken woman in terms of all the hard work and sacrifice she'd given. And it was, sad to see a pretty gorgeous, strong woman, descent into sort of, loneliness and self-pity. And that's why I basically wanted to keep an eye on her to make sure that, she wouldn't be alone in advancing years.
Sure, and you brothers and sisters the same?
Yeah. So we all go and see her. I see her all the time. So
yeah. And in the book, you were saying that you fell out with your sister and you didn't talk for a year and stuff.
Yeah,
like that.
and I fell out with my big sister. We didn't speak for 12 years.
12 years.
Yeah,
Wow.
that was over rubbish. And I suppose that's the sort of stubborn nature of the Wallace family.
Yeah.
But even though we had fallen out, I'd be the first person, vice versa, but us to ride to each other's rescues when we needed it. So, yes.
Well, it's great that you write things like that, because a lot of people would shy away. And a strange thing we were talking about earlier, I said to you, I'll give you an inkling of some of the questions I might be likely to ask, and you said, no, I like surprises. So
I don't like surprises, no, just ask me. I do like,
you like surprises, I suppose,
true,
because, obviously if you don't know what the questions are, it's straight off the top of your head, so, well, thanks for doing that, by the way. So you did a few jobs, so I'm looking them up and I'm thinking, well, one of them was an actor.
Well, yeah, I mean, as I say, I was in a film called The Class with Miss McMichael. I mean, I was an extra.
And is that fair to say extra?
Yeah, I was an extra.
Did you say any words?
Yeah, I did actually. But you see, they ended up on the cutting room floor, sadly. Damn. But you do see me in the first 5 minutes of that particular film. It's called The Class with Miss McMichael with Janet Jackson and Oliver Reed.
Wow.
It was like a sort of rowdier version of To Serve with Love.
Yeah.
And it was a fantastic experience. And Silvia Nazarino, who directed that famous film Gregory Girl in the 1960s.
Yeah.
We all went along to the audition. I originally invited to go along. My mate said, look, let's come along, because we worked at the old original Burger King, which was in Coventry Street.
I was going to say that too, yeah.
So we went to pick up our wages, because we were going back to start a second year of our sixth form. So they said, sure, just come along. So I went along, and I wasn't part of the sort of drama group, because I used to like playing football on the Wednesdays.
Yeah.
So we were all in a room, and Judd Trump, who was a producer, came in with Silvia Nazarino, and he just went, I want you. And he just pointed to me. And I was, I felt like I was suspended in disbelief, as I mentioned in the book. And to see everybody else's faces, that they were gutted. So we went to an old school off the Roman Road in Old Ford. And I was there, I did about 10 filming days, I got £10 a day. I mean, I might not seen a lot, but in 1977 that was like a king's ransom. And it was fantastic.
What was you getting when you was at Burger King, just to keep it in relation?
Probably about £3 an hour, something like that.
Yeah.
So, that was just a summer job, because I always used to like having summer jobs in the summer.
Yeah.
And in the 70s and throughout the 80s, I always used to work on play schemes.
Yeah.
Because I think that was much more easier than sort of working in a sort of factory and things like that.
So. What was your favourite job you've done then across your whole career so far?
Discounting law. It's got to be as a barrister. It's got to be as a barrister.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because of the fact that as a boy, that's all I wanted to be. I had my heroes, people like George Carmen QC, the fictional Rumpole of the Bailey. I used to watch programs like Petrocelli. The Verdict with Paul Newman was one of my favourite films. Anything to do with law, I wanted to be like that, because I wanted to use my skills as an advocate to try and help people who are less fortunate and not in a position to help themselves. Even to this day, I always want to be remembered as a person who's a barrister who happens to be on TV, not the other way around.
Right, that's good. So we like to encourage people on the show to increase and improve their wealth and their health.
Yeah.
So two things, because I know you do a lot of exercise as well.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Right. Can we come back to that in a second?
Course,
Let's go for the wealth things first of all. So, okay, you're an author.
Yes.
You're a columnist.
Yeah.
Is it the
Sunday Express?
Sunday Express.
Yeah.
And then also you're a mastermind champion and quizzer, so you may have got some fees from that.
Yeah.
You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
You're getting multiple incomes.
Well, I didn't get paid for winning Mastermind. I did that for the love of competition. That's why I got into quizzing in the first place, the thrill of the competition.
But that's led on to the chase.
Yeah, and if there's a prize at the end of it, then there's a prize. And you'll come on to the autobiography. My first breakthrough was in a show called Greed with Jerry Springer.
Yeah.
And although that only lasted series, between us we won £250,000.
Right.
So quizzing is a great way of earning money if you're good, because it's tax free.
Yes.
I obviously work as a barrister, and although I extensively do legal aid work, which is publicly funded work, I do all right. And there's the other things like where I get invited now to actually either host charity quizzes or sometimes I get paid for that. So, I do have various income streams, which I'm doing okay.
Okay then. Now this is the thing, you see, because obviously people that are out there, they're doing their one steady job maybe, let's say, and they don't realise that even people like yourself have got a slightly different variation on a theme, and they're picking up fees and money from elsewhere. And they can do exactly the same.
Absolutely. And I the one thing which I am always trying to do is to encourage people to actually do the best they can do in terms of the time they spend on this earth. Because I'm not the type of person who wants to have it all for myself. And there's a lot of people who are like that, which I find not only distasteful, I find actually disgusting, really. Because the one thing about wealth, no matter how rich you are, mortality is a great liver. You can't take it with you when you're dead, even though the Egyptians have tried and sadly failed. But I think it's important that people should be encouraged. I'm always trying to give. I always talk about the ladder of opportunity. I think it's important that the ladder of opportunity should be down there for everybody to actually climb up and hopefully go beyond any sort of levels I set for myself.
Okay. Hi, I'm Andy Arter, and I hope you're enjoying the podcast with me and Shaun. If you are and you fancy starting your own podcast, there's a great opportunity for you. Saturday the 20th of July, I'm hosting the one-day podcast creation workshop in London with pro podcaster, marketer and best-selling author Chris Huskins. We'll get your podcast started on the day with training on all aspects of podcasting from start to finish. The venue's fantastic and incredibly accessible, plus there's a chance to win a portable podcast recorder worth £200. There's valuable resources provided to start your podcast, and Chris will be signing free copies of his book, The Most Comprehensive Guide to Podcasting Ever, probably. Click on the link in my post for more information. Now back to the podcast. So I want to talk about your football in a minute, right? Both in the book you talk about the football, and we were talking about Chelsea earlier.
Yeah, I'm a big Chelsea fan.
Yeah. So before we do that, let's just harp back on a little bit of a section of the book, if I can read it out, if that's okay. And it was about the family stuff. I know we were talking earlier about your sister and your mum falling out and stuff like that. So just to conclude that, this is what you've written. This wasn't the only conflict that was raging within the Wallace household. The old adage that two hens cannot rule the roost in the same coop was never better illustrated than in the ever-growing arguments between Mum and Sandra. But like Dad, Mum was also a woman of her times, a woman who determined to exert total control over her eldest daughter. Although Sandra's rebelliousness and dogged determination to be treated as a woman in her own right was equally uncompromising, there was only going to be one winner in that war of attrition. So
that's all part of growing up, really, isn't it? If you've got children, you obviously want the best for them, but sometimes there's that difficult period, I say, between adolescence and being a young adult, where the young adolescent wants to actually assert his or her own independence, living under the rules of a parent which they find stifling and uncompromising, and they want to be themselves. And the one thing I always say to young people is that, there's always that difficult time between being an adult and being a young adolescent, knowing when to accept the rules of the house and knowing when to actually assert your own independence, especially when you're at that time when you're passing exams and want to do exams. And it's very, very difficult to strike that balance between knowing when to work, knowing when to study. We all went through that. I found it difficult, and it's important to strike that right balance. And there's got to be a little give and take between the parent and the child. The parent has got to recognise that you have that sort of protective cocoon, and you just got to let them go and grow. So that they can turn into the adult that you hoped and dreamed that they would be. And at the same token, the child's got to realise that the parent has always got your best interests at heart. You will always be a parent, and I will always be a child to my mum and dad. And no matter, and I'm nearly 60 next year.
You don't look it, by the way. You kept yourself.
Well, we'll talk about that when we talk about health.
We're going to go on to that.
I think it's important that mutual respect in relation to the respective roles that relationship has must always be present. Because if there's a breakdown in it, it's always going to be difficult. Especially in relation to West Indian households. Back in the 60s, I talk about the fact that my dad, although was a kind man, he was an alpha male. The Englishman's home is his castle. what I say goes. And there was that conflict between me and myself and my father when I was growing up. And the same with the mother and daughter. You know, a daughter wants to sort of have boyfriends, wants to grow up, wants to assert her womanhood, and the mother basically, you know, wants to clamp down on that, and that conflict and that friction, you know, it's no different than any household up and down the country.
Okay, so you do a little bit of work with kids anyway, I understand.
And I've always done that because I think it's important. Even now, I'm in the public eye, because I always say, with fame comes responsibility. And you know, you like Superman, you should use your powers of responsibility wisely. And I remember, and I'm sure the same was for you, when you know you had somebody famous coming into your school, you're so excited, buck-eyed, and sort of, you know, frothing at the mouth with excitement that somebody would take
today, Sean.
Nah,
I am today.
No, not really. You know, they leave a lasting impression on you, and I think it's important, especially from my perspective, being black, being you know, an ordinary guy from the block. I like to say, and I am. I've not let fame change me at all. But for children to see me, and I say to them, listen, I was young like you once, and I want you to have the same opportunities and goals like me. But for me, it's got to be the way you educate your mind. An educated mind opens so many doors, and that's why I go into schools. And I show them little, you know, clips of my quizzing career. I always show them me winning Mastermind. I show them a very exciting 2-minute of the final chase, and they love that. And that's what I say to them. The reason I like that, because I want to learn.
Good on you. Good on you for doing the work that you do, by the way. So, football.
Football.
We both love football.
We both love football. We both support teams which you know, have a history of you know, enmity between us. You know, there's two reasons why I hate Spurs, and I use that with a passion. The first reason was because in 1967, as I talk about in the book,
yes, you do,
you know, I had a cousin called Roy Walker, who I looked up to, and I still look up to this day, and he was a big Spurs fan. He actually took me to my very first match, which was a Spurs game. But it was a '67 Cup final, and we had a black and white TV. And just to annoy him, I said I could support the team in the dark shirts, which happened to be Chelsea. And it was the first London Cup final, and we lost 2-1. And another reason why I had that enmity against Spurs was in April 1975, both Chelsea and Spurs were occupying 22 and 23 positions in the league, in the 24 league then. And the loser of the penultimate game at White Hart Lane went down, and Alfie Conn, of formerly Rangers, scored those 2 goals, lost 2-0. We were relegated in 1975. And although we won up 2 years later in 77, Spurs went down in 77.
Yes, they did,
They then came up in 78 and signed all those Argentina World Cup players. We then went down in 79. Took us 5 years to get back into the league.
Painful.
Right, and from 1991 to 2007 will always be the best point of my footballing life. Because home and away, we would go at 3-point lane, as we used to call it.
That's right.
Take 3 points for a point and never lose. And I think the rivalry between Chelsea and Spurs is just fierce.
John, we're going to gloss over that very, very quickly now. All right, tell us a bit more about your own career in football.
I wanted to be a footballer just like anybody else, and I had my heroes like Pelé, George Best. My biggest hero at the time growing up, even though he played for a different club, was Bobby Moore, because he exemplified everything you'd want in an English footballer: a perfect gent, a great leader, and a superb footballer. And when I won Mastermind, when I lifted the trophy, I felt like Bobby Moore.
Lifting the World Cup.
I felt like I was lifting the World Cup.
Wasn't it?
So, you know, like anybody, you know, I wanted to be a footballer, and I looked to people for inspiration to show that, you know, you can have other jobs and still be a professional footballer. Steve Coppell, he was an economics graduate. He was an amateur at Tranmere, was signed for Man United, played 42 times for England. Stevie Highway got an economics degree. Brian Hall from Liverpool got an economics degree. Socrates was a qualified doctor.
He was, yes. And
Ozzy Ardiles was a World Cup winner who was a qualified lawyer. So I wanted to see if I could combine football and law at the same time, because I think sometimes if you have got a bit of talent, I'm not saying I was the most skillful person in the world. I was like Kevin Keegan, I'd sort of work at my talent. But I was a good goal scorer. So
you never quite got there, really.
No, I only got as far as Hendon Reserves, unfortunately, and you know, alas, the sort of Theatre of Dreams was at Old Trafford.
Even though you was round the corner from Wembley, you wasn't quite there with.
No, I wasn't.
Hendon,
but
was you?
you know, every cloud does have a silver lining, because
Yes.
I managed to play twice at Wembley in 2 cup finals in 1991.
Tell us a little bit.
Yeah, I played for a Sunday side called Coolock Rangers. So after I didn't make it as a footballer, I stopped playing football for about 6 years, because qualifying as a lawyer was more important to me.
Yeah.
Then I started playing for a Sunday side called Coolock Rangers, and then we were fantastically successful. And we played in 2 amateur cup finals, both at Wembley. I played in the first game, got injured, and in the second game I sat on the bench, but I got 2 cup winners medals.
And did you score any goals?
No, I did not in the cup final. I got injured in the first one, and I sat.
Score at Wembley.
It was superb.
It was great to play there anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, brilliant.
So I did realise those dreams of actually playing at Wembley. And when I did the Mastermind Grand Final, those 2 cup winners medals were acted as mascots on my back pocket.
Brilliant. So your Mastermind final questions was around.
Well, my Mastermind specialist subjects were all on football, because when I was looking for a subject to do, originally I wanted to do Kings and Queens of England, world history since 1945, because my history is very, very good, very good. And FA Cup finals, they said I couldn't do Kings and Queens of England because somebody else had done it the previous year, and I was going to pull out. And I thought to myself, what is the one specialist subject I could be really good at? Ding! Football.
Right, well in that case, I've got something slightly different, variation on a theme here, because everybody always probably wants to ask you questions. I've got a few questions from some of the listeners and people that I know on Facebook. If you don't mind me asking.
No, of course not.
All right, but before we do that,
I
want you to test me with a question. What about that, Shaun?
Okay, I'll test you with a couple of questions.
Now be gentle.
I will.
Keep it simple, because I'm a very simple type person.
Okay.
1970s.
Fine.
FA Cup finals. Be kind. Ask me a question or two.
Okay.
Not that hard, Shaun.
Okay.
Right.
FA Cup finals.
Yeah.
In what year was the centenary FA Cup final? Which 2 teams took part?
Crikey. I'm going to go then. 1976, Manchester United and Southampton.
Unlucky. 1972.
Leeds and Arsenal. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I missed that.
Unlucky.
Yeah, that's right. I'll keep going.
Who scored the 2 goals which won West Ham the FA Cup in 1975?
1975. That was Alan. Trying to remember his surname. Taylor.
Alan Taylor.
Yeah.
The last player to score in 2 goals in the quarterfinals, 2 goals in the semi-final, and 2 goals in the final.
Oh,
very good.
Yes.
In the 1978 final, who scored the winning goal?
That was for Ipswich. It was Roger Osborne.
Scored
it against Arsenal.
He certainly did.
Yeah,
he certainly did.
Shaun, I'm going to quit there where I'm ahead.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
I'm 2-1 up, so I'm going to quit.
Absolutely, brilliant.
So I passed the test.
Yeah, you certainly have.
Not quite Mastermind champion.
No, listen, it's very, very good. I'm very impressed.
Thank you. Right, we'll go on to some of the questions then.
Fine.
And some of the other people. Different topics, different subjects.
No, fine.
Okay. So let's see if we can get there. Jane Baylor was asking, as you go around schools a lot, would you say law is still a good career for youngsters?
Yes, I'd say, of course it is. Any professional career is a good career for youngsters. The disappointment I have with governments, particularly the Labour government in the early noughties, was when they introduced tuition fees. I don't think I could ever forgive the Labour government for that, because it saddled our bright young students with an enormous debt.
Yeah.
And although I had the advantage of having a free education, I would always encourage young people to actually, irrespective of the fact that you have to pay for education, to go into any profession you think you're entitled to. Because I always say to young people is this: you're the next generation. Somebody's going to have to replace me. Somebody's going to have to replace the next doctor, eminent doctor, or eminent scientist. Ask yourself this question: why can't it be you?
Yeah, that's fair enough then. So Hazel Stapleton was saying, as your status as Afro-Caribbean role model.
I don't call myself a role model. I call myself a goal model. And the reason why, people have a tendency to put people on a pedestal. And I'm human just like everybody else. I've got to, I don't want to be put on a great pedestal, because if I make mistakes and I'm human just like anybody else, you fall from a great height.
Yes, okay.
And you know what? I'd rather I'm comfortable on the floor.
Okay. So she was saying, Your position is to be congratulated, but what was your driver's success?
Everybody has heroes to look up to, and I don't, you read in the foreword, no one is an island. I don't care how successful you are, how brilliant you are, everybody needs that support to give you the hand up. Mm-hmm. Everybody needs that source of encouragement. Obviously you've got to have the focus and drive from within to actually achieve that. But anybody who tells me I'm successful because I made it all by myself is a liar.
Okay. So Neela Chakraborty was asking, what would you propose parents do today to make their kids more future ready?
Give them as much support as they possibly can. Remember, as I said to you, sometimes parents always mean well, always have got the children's best interests at heart. But when the child gets around 15, 16, 17, there is that conflict in relation to a child growing up wanting to assert his or her independence, and not wanting to be dictated to. And as I say, that child has got to strike the right balance between knowing how to assert your own independence, knowing what to do, what it takes to get you to the next level, and knowing that there is that support structure which is there to actually help you. Yeah. And parents, vice versa, have got to strike that right balance between, letting go to a great degree, always keeping an eye, because you'll always be the parent, you'll always love that child, you'll always want to support that child no matter how old they are, but to recognise that child is growing up and is growing up to be a responsible adult who will one day be a possible important member within the community and the society at large. Mm-hmm. So both sides have got to strike the right balance to actually achieve, which, I'm not saying it's an easy balance to strike, because I'm not going to sit there and say, of course it is, because it's not.
Sure. Okay, well, final question. In 2005, you were campaigning to become an independent MP.
That's correct.
Would you consider going back into politics, and what changes would you want in your constituency? And that's from Cameron Fisher.
No, I wouldn't. The only reason I stood was because of the fact of my staunch opposition to tuition fees.
Right.
So that was a major platform which I stood, and obviously, my then fierce opposition to the Iraq War. I'm too idealistic to be a politician because, and too altruistic. You can't have altruism and idealism working alongside the cold, brutal reality of what politics is like. So I don't think politics would be for me.
Okay, fair enough then. But you did try at the time, and you were highlighting the obviously issues that.
Yeah, and I even to this day, I still think it's wrong. For people to actually, on the one hand, have the benefit of free education and then impose debt on their future society.
Tough on the youngsters now, definitely. So you obviously liked your football, but you also keep really fit now, don't you?
Always have done.
Tell me about that, because you got a lot of effort that you're putting into your fitness.
I like running. I've done the London Marathon. I ran for WizKids and I got injured a month beforehand and I almost had to pull out, but the mere fact that I would have let those children down, so 2 days beforehand I said, right, I'm doing it, and although it took me longer than I expected it, I've done it. And it's not about running anybody else's race, it's about running your own race.
You wasn't going to beat Mo Farah.
No. He probably would have lapped me. So it's about running your own race, and I've always liked to keep myself fit and healthy. I do 1,000 sit-ups a day, sometimes 2.
Shaun, that's incredible.
Yeah.
You say you're nearly 60 now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because by the time I'm about 80 in my advancing years, I want to be able to be physically independent as long as I possibly can, and you can only do that by putting in the hard work. And the worst thing about training is the thought of doing it.
And actually, while you're doing it, you're not too bad. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying it's easy.
No.
But you feel much more invigorated and satisfied once you've completed it.
Yeah, sure.
But the thought of doing training is the worst part of it.
Well, we get a lot of professionals on the show, bodybuilders, World Cup winners at cricket, professional footballers who played at Wembley and won a League Cup medal, one of the guys, and they've all said pretty much the same. It's all in your head.
Yeah.
And you're exactly right about that. So we couldn't do a show like this without touching on the chase.
Yeah.
Okay. So
how did I get into it?
Yeah.
Well, in the aftermath of having lost the Eggheads Grand Final, when they started to broadcast Are You an Egghead on ITV in the autumn of 2008, I get a phone call out of the blue from ITV, and they asked me to come along for an audition for what they said would be an exciting new game show. So I went along. They asked me 30 questions. I got 28 out of 30. They asked me what I was doing. I said, I'm about to be seen in the series of Are You an Egghead? They asked me how I'd done. I said, I'm not telling you. If you want to find out how I done, watch that as my audition. And I think secretly they contacted the BBC to find out how I'd done.
Right.
Because when they broadcast the final of Are You an Egghead in December 2nd, 2008, the following day I was in front of an ITV commissioning panel.
Right, okay.
So I was working on that show for 4 months by myself. In April 2009, they then brought in Mark. We then went up to Manchester in June 2009. Did a 10-show pilot. The rest, they say, is history. You know, and the show's a phenomenal success. By and large, due to the fact that everybody who works on the show, I like to call it the Chase family, because from the runners right up to Bradley, we all treat each other with respect. And the one thing I said to Mark, because I'm always known as the #1 chaser. I'm the world's first chaser. Anything else from that?
And you're my favourite chaser as
well. That's nice of you. And one thing I said to Mark, in order for the show to succeed, we as chasers have got to respect each other's abilities. Because if you start having egos, or I'm better than you, or it's not going to work, and that all will filter through. And every chaser's come on board, and then Paul, then Jenny, we've all brought into it, and we really get on well as a team.
Okay. We obviously on the chase. You're what's he called? Grumpy Drawers?
Well, no, the Grumpy Drawer. I'm known as a Dark Destroyer.
The Dark Destroyer, but I mean, he calls you.
Because I'm grumpy all the time.
All I was going to say was, it's good to see you smiling today, Shaun.
That's me generally, but when I quiz, I'm not there to smile, and that's me being genuine.
Getting on with your job.
Right, but in saying that, I'm the only chaser who'll go and see the contestants afterwards, whether they win or lose.
Okay.
I'll always do that.
Who's your favourite chaser?
We get on very well. I would say, because we started out together, Mark. You know, we have a really good, I get on very, very well. I quiz with Paul every single week. And although...
Are you in a team together?
Yeah.
I wouldn't like to go up against your team.
Oh, you've got to be joking. Some of the teams we play in the Quiz League of London, mate.
They're good, yeah? Wow.
Exceptionally good.
Really?
So I'll say Mark, because, we started out together. We did the pilot together, and, Mark's gone on to do the show in Australia and the United States. I've done the show in Australia, Anne's done it in Australia. Paul's out there in New Zealand now promoting. Paul's a comedian.
Yes.
We get on very, very, very well. Really well.
Okay, fair enough.
And we're celebrating our 10th anniversary in June. So.
Are you having anything special?
I think they're going to be doing, loads of sort of articles in the newspapers. We may be doing something on TV. I'm not sure. Even if I don't know. But I always knew the show was going to be a success, and I am so grateful that the public have made the show the success it is today, and that's why I'll always stop if people stop me in the street and say, "Oh, it's a Dark Destroyer." And sometimes I get a bit, "Hey, why are you getting excited?" Because
I'm just Shaun. Yeah.
And I think that's because of the fact that the reason why I take that all in my stride is for two reasons. Firstly, having success at a later age in life, once you've gone through the adverse and disappointments I have, has made me appreciate it more. And that's one. I think the same is true with Bradley. Bradley used to be a professional footballer.
Yes.
Gave it all up because he wanted to be a comedian, and he had to do the hard yards, working in the working men's club, working in the holiday camps, working on the cruise ships, he served his apprenticeship. So success came for him relatively late in life, and he's reaping all the benefits because of the fact that he's not allowed success to go to his head or change him. And that's why, he's the same guy who was the same kid working as an apprentice at the RAF all those years ago.
Okay. Well, Shaun, we're getting towards the end of the show now. The book's been absolutely brilliant. I've not quite finished it yet, but I'm gonna have, obviously, say to people, go out and buy it.
It is, honestly.
It's great.
It is, honestly.
It's a really good book. Chasing the Dream, Shaun Wallace, and I'm enjoying it. I can't wait to get home and finish off.
Let me know.
I will.
Yeah.
Shaun, how can people get hold of you or get hold of a copy of the book?
Well, to get hold of the copy of the book, if you go to my Twitter page, it's got all the information where you can contact my publishers, or you can go to Amazon and get it. Obviously, with celeb agents, they're my main agents. If you just contact them, if you want to get hold of me, you can always do so. You can always contact my chambers if you need legal advice. Hopefully you don't need legal advice, I'm a criminal lawyer.
37 Great James Street.
That's right.
When you said that to me, I said, yeah, but what's the chambers called? Oh, that's the address. And you're like, no, it's called 37.
Well, it's Great James Street Chambers, really.
Great James Street Chambers, okay, fair enough. Sure, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Cheers,
Thanks very much.
Thanks. Good luck in the Champions League final. Not too much luck, really.
Good luck in the Europa final.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I think if Spurs do win the European Cup and we don't, I can imagine the songs which are going to be sung. Oh, dear.
I'll be the lead singer.
I can imagine. Cheers, mate.
Thanks very much.
Cheers, thank you.
I hope this podcast gives you inspiration. And if you want to contact me, I'm Andy Arter, and it's transformyourwealthandhealth@gmail.com.